Hey, can you hear me
Hey
okay?
Tim, this is me again. We talked about the smallpox outbreak with the New York and the Black Friday shit.
Yeah, the Black Friday, the division, the drills in New
Yep.
York, and then, of course, Bill Gates cackling about smallpox.
Yeah, that was like what, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
All right. So I got one question that's completely not off topic, but it kind of correlates with the flat Earth thing.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
What are your thoughts on the Tartarians? If you've delved into that any?
I have. In fact, I should bring that up tonight. I'll bring it up tonight. Well, I'll mention it because, actually, I'm hitting the live button now, but I think that there is a there. I don't know about the full narrative or the people promulgating it, but the idea that we don't have a really clear picture of what went on historically a few hundred years back is very interesting. And also, considering that the Tartarian thing is based on the reset theory. And right now we're living through the Great Reset. So I'm
Another
wondering what's up with that.
another reason, yeah.
So are
I don't
resets
know.
real?
So
Are resets like
it would seem so.
reoccurring? And that was one of the theories behind the Matrix movie, that it was like the fifth or the sixth generation of the Matrix. And in fact, the next iteration of that movie is coming out. But this reset theory is kind of what I'm interested in looking into, and the Tartarians would fit in that because that's just basically the empire that was here before.
What little bit I know about them is they had about 1,000 year reign, and we are supposedly set to date. Like instead of, well, it's 2021 now, but it should technically be like 1221.
Right.
Because I was watching some
Right.
shit about.
Okay. So the calendar, in other words, you're saying, and I've heard this before, that the calendar has been um, adjusted to hide 1,000
Manipulated.
years. Or yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They added 1,000 years.
And I was recently watching some videos that the uh, the artists of like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and starts with an F. Back in the 1600s, all came out of Florence of Italy, but they all have very identical paint styles in terms of how the outcome is, of how realistic they can paint.
Right. I've heard. Okay. I've come across some, like John Levy, for example, suggesting that what we're seeing with this Renaissance art is a uniform technology that some have even suggested some kind of high-tech printing, even 3D printing involved, and it's just being described as something else. What do you think about that?
No, I believe it because even back in my earlier years looking at the paintings, it's like, how can they make it so realistic? But today, it's way too abstract to for someone to even come close to that with a freehand painting.
Okay, so now related to this topic though is the reset, and oftentimes people kind of conflate this with mud flood and the idea that there
Yeah.
was some kind of cataclysm involving sediment or mud being uh, widely dispersed across everything. And funnily enough, I'm watching a TV series right now called on Netflix called The 100, and it's all about this
Yeah.
post-nuclear apocalypse world where 100 people come back down from the space ark. Note the terminology. And the thing is, they don't say mud flood, but when you look, the whole world is buried. Statue of Liberty is up to her neck, and the Golden Gate Bridge under mud. A similar scene I think is in Planet of the Apes, that type of thing. So, the mud flood concept, it just implies that there's some kind of a flood, and it results in sediment deposits everywhere.
Yes, because a lot of the buildings that are much older, you I can't say definitively, but can see some of the structure that looks like it is buried. Even in my hometown in Tennessee, some of the buildings look like they shouldn't be, covered up by that much. 'Cause you got like half windows poking out the ground, and that's very vague, but
No, it's kind of
just
funny though
something
when
to
you
look into.
look. I mean, it could be bias confirmation, but I've taken a look and I've seen all the same consistent flags that would suggest that this would be a quote mud flood affected area. Like we have these buildings downtown with these radiation shelters, and I'm like, when were we in the middle of New Mexico worried about nuclear holocaust? These fallout shelters, and there is a great like underground infrastructure downtown, including an underground mall that nobody uses unless you're going to the DMV, motor vehicle department. So it's like, yeah, there is that consistency along with the ubiquitous red brickery. So, um, if you look for it, you can find it.
Yeah, because okay, so in our courthouse we have a fallout shelter that goes well underground.
And one of the court was is the
That's used.
courthouse an old building? Because one of the common things and themes here is that
Yes,
it's the more
it is.
ancient
It,
architecture. Uh huh.
it is an older building. I wasn't trying to cut you off. My bad.
No, no, I was just running it by because, yeah, the idea here would be that a lot of the infrastructure we have here is probably disposable. And the architects of this place who push the reset button, well, their abodes, their properties are going to be just fine. And they may be built on something maybe a little firmer than the rest, whatever this happens to be. But um, at a minimum, there is something there to look into, like I was saying, because I had not heard the term reset until someone brought up mud flood theory. And that was way before Dr. Klaus Schwab came out with his Great Reset.
Okay.
Now, have you given any thought
So
to what would have caused this, though, this mud flood thing? Is this a cyclical thing, do you think, or do you think this is some sort of a man-caused or technology, a weapon?
so from what little bit I've read and heard throughout this my rabbit hole of this Tartarians is there were a few, I think 13 members or individuals that did not partake with the Tartarian ideal, and they broke it down from the inside out. Slowly over 300 years, I think,
Well, so
and which,
So for again, who do you like when you bring this topic up? What channels have you been following, by the way? Like, do you follow John Levy and others? And because I haven't been keeping up with it very much, but where were you first introduced to this topic?
so actually from one of my coworkers actually first got me into this. Whenever he first told me, I thought that was a little far fetched, and I did some research. And most recently, I've been on the channel of My Unveiled, and they have, I think, a 7-part Tartarian series that deals with the a more broader outlook as to certain cities, timelines, uh, Renaissance art.
Okay,
I
okay,
was going through Reddit. I don't remember exactly which subreddit, but they delved with the Tartarians and they introduced me to the 1,000 year void. And then the Mind Unveiled also said the 1,000 year reign, so that fits together.
okay. So now this is interesting. I remember us talking to, I believe it was Commander Lou from Crater Earth USA about this, and because I was suggesting, where does this fit into Revelations? It seems like it already happened. And he had given some talk on his channel about how there is no salvation, that we've already passed, that the world already ended or something. I mean, that just paraphrasing, but the idea here is that this whole premise is based on that there was a better civilization and that it was ruined, and that we're sort of living in the ruins of something, and that we've been kept from any information about it. I mean, it's a pretty big claim, but then again, look at how mendacious the news media is today. You can't trust them to report the news today. Why would you trust them about news 20, 30, 40, 100 years ago? And the media has always been, I think, really just the spokesmouths for the powerful. And the same ones write the history books, write our news.
The victors write the history books.
Yep. Hey, Clockwork in the chat, Clockwork113 says he first heard of it from Philip Drusden a few years ago. Now, I know some people who are very much against it. They're really against the idea and they really dispute it. I think it's interesting the idea of 1,000 years of this major distortion in our timeline. I don't think that's far-fetched, at all. I think it's just so
Right?
arbitrary. Everything that we have, our histories are so arbitrary. It's malleable. I was talking to some friends about this today, how if you ask the Democrats, they'll tell you that the Republicans are racist. And the Republicans will say, well, no, it was the Democrats who owned the slaves and were behind black codes and Jim Crow. But then the Democrats will say, well, no, the bad racist ones became Republicans 20 or 30 years ago. So, everybody has a different story and it's always self serving. So I'm definitely open
Yeah.
to any discussion about what may have been previous to this previous reset. Do you have a time frame? When would you place this previous resetting or destruction of civilization?
I actually I actually do because if you've looked up, well, I can't say if you have, but in some of the Marco Polo journals, he talks about the Tartarians or the Tartar. I think it's what is. I could be wrong in the exact name of the city or I don't want to say country, but landmass, not landmass. Fuck. Anyways, Marco Polo talks about the Tartarians in a 1600s map. It's very shown, and then fast forward to the 1800s, it's a completely different map of the same area. I would say between the 16 and the 1800s were the fall of the Tartarians.
Okay, 16 and 1800s. Okay, interesting. That time frame would kind of make more sense to me. And again, we're talking about a previous reset because right now we're going through a great reset, and they're already like most people listening probably already know. YouTube just burned my last YouTube channel. So they're going to burn all the information that they don't want us to have. And so who knows what the history is going to say in 100 years? We might not even exist. That's how much media control they are asserting and taking.
And I would agree with you upon you saying that this manuscript has been going on for at least 100 years now. That I would completely agree with. Almost completely agree with.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I have a mind map, and I would point back as far as 1906, if not a little bit sooner. The first instances of predictive programming for the major transformative psychodramas like 9/11. These things were predicted, I think, yeah, maybe 100 years ago. But that would also kind of suggest that the people who planned these things were already organized well before then. So, yeah, I think that there's evidence of media control going back generations. And it's a story that was written in advance. And they're molding everything to fit that agenda, to fit that uh, pre-written script. I mean, it's already there. It's like predestination. They're playing God.
Well, okay, if you think about that time period, you got the Edisons, the Rockefellers, uh, Tesla, Wittenhouse, or Westinghouse, not Wittenhouse, Westinghouse. Those four major people right there. They still own most of everything today, so it does line up.
Right. Okay, now here's another side to it. And I keep referencing movies because they're so useful. I can name a lot of movies that describe what we're articulating here, like in a microcosm, like the movie The Village, about a commune where the people in the commune live as though it's the 17th century, but the children don't know it's the 20th century, and their parents keep them kind of sequestered on this private
Mm.
property. So it just shows you how
Yes,
you can be blinded about the nature of reality, and they scare them so they don't leave the place. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. Is there an elite group that has the masses in a village, in a false worldview? And this could be true with or without mud flooding everybody or burying everything. Like not a it doesn't have to be a literal burying of civilization. They could just be metaphorically burying it, burning it, etc.
I got a question for you. Do I know you like to do the etymology of words. Do you know about the word conspiracy whenever it was first brought about as its meaning?
I just figured it meant breathe together because the two words together and then spirit comes from breath, but breathing together is what I thought, and I started using it in that sense because of COVID. You're conspiracy theorists. You're not wearing a mask. You're all breathing the same air. You're not social distanced. But well, what have you found with regard to that word?
So back in the 30s and well, the 20s, 30s, and 40s, before the population exploded, they were easily able to suppress and silence those who spoke out and reached the knowledge that they did not want people to see or acquire. Come Roswell, then after that, they had to group together the people who were outspoken and label them as conspiracists or label them as conspiracies. I think I could be
Yes, yes,
botching what I read a little bit.
yes. I have found Snopes kind of dispute, but basically, yeah. The story is that the term conspiracy theorist was brought up to stop anybody critical of the Warren Commission. So basically, yeah, if you question the news, now you're the one offering a theory that implies a conspiracy to lie to the public. And to me, this is when they effectively shifted the burden of proof to where you have to be an MSM believer or you're a
Yeah.
conspiracy theorist, which is now a conspiracist or a conspiracist. So, yeah, that term was used to silence people who can see, and it works.
Unfortunately, yes, because everyone is so brainwashed, brain controlled, and just a walking zombie that doesn't even realize it.
Yeah, that's true, except for pretty much our subscribers and the people who are actively seeking. Because there's a difference, people are actively seeking, and then you have the people who live like NPCs. And I don't know if NPCs are real, but people can behave like that. It's pretty easy.
That is true. And whenever I said that, it was very vague. I was talking about the audience that listens to us right now. 'Cause, if they're listening to us, they have an open mind. They're not brainwashed.
Right, and oh yeah,
But
absolutely.
those outside of our circles, they're hard to convert outside of the brainwashing. I've tried.
It's a, it,
It's difficult.
I liken it to this. You're dealing with a new religion that has been imposed on society. We've basically had a stealth jihad, but it was the religion of scientism, not radical Islam that took over. And this succeeded. So we have a new religion, and we are atheists to this particular religion. So if you're an atheist and you're in a church, good luck walking out with converts. You're not going to do it. We're outnumbered. We lost. The invasion of the body snatchers already happened.
Can I play devil advocate for a second?
Yeah, by all means.
If, if we're going to delve into religion just a little bit. So, if we do live on a flat Earth and we are placed in a dome, and I'm going to go with the whole biblical flat Earth for a second. Then, if we are actually inside a dome, then that would slightly more reinforce the fact that there might be a God that put us here.
Well, I think it would
Just saying.
certainly insinuate, it would certainly suggest a higher, a designer, a creator,
Yeah.
a builder, which could be an alien with a big squid head. But yeah, absolutely, a designer.
Well, okay, so I said God, but yes, a higher being that is way more technologically advanced than we will ever be inside our dome.
Could even be a sadistic demiurge, and this could be some kind of prison for souls to be confused into thinking that we're flesh. That's a possibility too. But yeah, absolutely, the domed concept, as opposed to the conventional spinning ball model, suggests intelligent design. With a spinning ball, yeah, it could all just be gravity and accidents.
And as one of your callers was saying, I listened to the one that was from yesterday, I think, that if we were sitting in Florida versus Alaska, our weight should be different.
Right. Yeah, I remember. That's from one of the archived plays. Yes, and I think there was someone. I think it was Wolfie or some anti-flat earther went around testing this, suggesting that yeah, that there would be differences depending on your latitude.
I believe it would be. I'm no scientist, but if you think about it, if you put just a little bit of critical thinking into it, you surely you between the equator to the North Pole, there would be a somewhat of a difference if we're on a ball.
There may be. I mean, they'll say they detected it. They'll bring out some device or an app, and the app will. Oh, the app says I weigh this much less over here. But now on this devil's advocate thing, uh, the
Okay.
infinite plane theory, or it's not even a theory. Like, I don't even think it's flat Earth theory so much as it's a question, because there's no complete model unless you go with the Bible, which, as you described, it has a dome. But without the dome, without any sort of, well, let's just say there is a cover, but does it have to be curved? Would be my question. So let's say it's not. Let's say that the sky is as flat as the ground, and we live between a flat sky and the flat Earth, and it goes on until I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, why would the dome curving be essential to there being a creator or a god? Why couldn't you have a god of an infinitely flat plane and infinitely flat sky? Is it because um, it takes away our unique and specialness if it's not tiny? Is that what it is?
Well, okay, to answer that, if we were enclosed in a petri dish, petri dish, so to speak, it's not a dome, it's not curved, it's flat. So, with us being enclosed like that, then something or some entity had to place us inside of that petri dish and watch us grow. Outside of the dome theory, then it's a little bit more difficult to place an entity who placed us here, or to say there's an entity who placed us here.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Now, for me though, one of the reasons why I suggested infinite plane anyway was just that you have to test the boundaries. We can't take anything for granted, and it's likely that the same people who designed your globe wrote the Bible or curated it, edited the thing, and so if you take it all for granted, that it's this size, this shape, or it's this amount of surface area, you might be overlooking hidden land, perhaps within the area defined by the globe or even just outside it. And the hidden land thing is key here because it would suggest that there's a reason and a rationale for a false model. Flat or otherwise, a false presentation. And why would they hide land? Of course, well, money, resources, power, and who knows? We're dealing with um, a major big deception here. And so there's got to be a financial incentive, if you ask me. And I think the hidden land thing makes a lot more sense than they're trying to hide the creator.
Yeah, and the whole debacle about the flat Earth or round Earth, ball Earth, started after General Byrd took his uh, trip to Antarctica. And I'll put trip in quotations with my fingers, although you can't see it. And that was the start of the Great Deception.
You know, Admiral Byrd had opened up lodge
After,
number 777 at the South Pole. Like, so he opened a Masonic lodge there, and I believe he left an apron at the North Pole. But I find that to be really curious too. The number 777 at the South Pole, mainly because that number actually happens to relate to the sword that the angel holds that guards Eden. There's like a flaming sword held by the angel that I think that Adam and Eve are chased out. But anyway, it's kind of interesting because you're talking about an edge, a border, a gate. And so for 777 to be the lodge down on the South Pole, Admiral Byrd, maybe he is, in fact, a gatekeeper, and that is, in fact, you know, more or less the boundary that they've given us.
Okay. I've
Let
got
me,
another idea to throw at you real quick.
sure.
Okay, so outside of Antarctic, there's supposed or Antarctica, there from one of the many maps I've seen, don't know how true it is, but it's either Venus or Mercury and Saturn, or okay, so I don't remember if it's Venus or Mercury, but outside of the Antarctic wall, what we see as Venus or Mercury is another what we would call sun going around illuminating the next phase. Then beyond that, there's another ice wall with Saturn. Pretty sure it's Saturn
I've seen those.
illuminating
I've
the
seen
third.
those. I believe I've seen some people model this idea of
Yeah,
consecutive rings, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if the motions of the so-called planets would support that, but it is interesting. I mean, I've seen some of these things modeled out, but anyway, even that to me makes more sense to at least pursue that. I'm just kind of curious to see, um, what would be the reason for hiding it. And again, I've come up with this idea that it's got to be land, and I'm waiting for them to start mining asteroids because they'll just be pulling it in from Terra Mar. And Terra Mar is actually, it's this nation that Ghislaine Maxwell founded, but it's based on the idea that something like 40% of the oceans are uncharted. So even that there kind of suggests, to me, a lot of room for hiding things. Do you have any opinions about the work of Vibes of Cosmos or Iwar Anon?
I do not.
These are the
Those,
these are the ones who, well, Vibes of Cosmos is the one who posited the notion that the moon is a projection, a plasma projection or phenomenon happening in the ionosphere, and that the craters are imprints or shadows of the projection, and that the white area, the lit areas, are where it's ocean, and that what we're actually seeing are the continents of the plane projected onto the thing we call the moon. And what he's done is he's lined up a group of craters on like a third of the moon, and he's correlated those with the known land, the known continents here, and then suggests that the rest of the moon would tell us where there's more land surrounding the continents that we've been shown. It's called Vibes of Cosmos. It's an interesting idea, but he also believes that there is a dome, but he just says it's much bigger and much higher than conventional flat earth theorists would say.
okay, I have seen that image. I just don't know who or where it came from. But yes, I have seen those images
Yeah,
to
I would look
where
into it. Vibes of
the moon.
Cosmos. I mean, Ewar Anon's taken it further, but and he's included Tartaria and all this other stuff into it. But yeah, the basic theory is that there's a black
Vibes of
sun.
calm. Okay.
Well, it has to rely though on there being another, like a sun below us or some kind of way that there's
Yes.
a projection coming up from below the Earth, up above, and then it's somehow reflected back down on us.
Do you know the pinhole picture where if you're inside like a fucking porta potty, you got a tiny little pinhole, and then you'll get the reflective image on the back wall of the or on the other side of the wall of that pinhole,
Yes, exactly.
and
Yes, the
they
photographic
reflect.
box or whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
That would be the exact same that we would seeing but flipped because we're seeing the bright side of it or the more illuminated version of it, or we're seeing the damn back wall. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I like this one too, though. I mean, I don't know for sure. I don't 100% go with it, but what I like about it is this. Whatever you think, even if you go with the spinning ball heliocentric model, you would be in denial of reality to say that there isn't a curious alignment between that group of craters and the continents that we have down here. It does line up that well, although there's an
It does,
extra
yes.
continent that it's like, well, maybe they're hiding land right there within range of our globe. That maybe it's not outside of the Antarctic ring. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
one more thing here. So, uh, this great reset with Klaus Schwab and all this stuff. So, again, I hadn't heard the phrase reset until the mud flood theory. So, do you think that this present great reset is going to involve some type of a flood of one kind or another?
Metaphorically speaking, a flood of death is
Got it.
where I would put that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a
Whether
flood
it's,
of ignorance too. I mean, the more they delete the internet, the more they're pretty much, I think, taking total control over history and everything. So, yeah, I mean, I can see the reset happening. I don't know if there's going to be a tidal wave of anything or anything real because everything they've done so far has been fake.
yes, it's it's aggravating to see how many people go along with it, but say follow the science, but don't actually look up what they're trying to follow themselves.
Well, science has been
Or
replaced.
even,
Science today is just a belief system. You believe the guy with the smock. It's no longer about thinking for yourself. And they even say that you shouldn't do your own research when it comes to science. Forbes put out a piece on that saying, yeah, do your own research when
yeah,
it comes to like things around your house. But when it comes to science, yeah, you got to leave that to the priests.
you know what? Actually, okay, so I'm gonna go do a little backstory real quick. You know what actually got me like open thinking and more of a free thinker type?
What's that? What got you to uh, look deeper into the fake world news or the fake worldview?
All right, so it actually started back in like middle school and probably around, yeah, middle school, watching the Science Channel, and their logo or their slogan was "Question everything."
Oh yeah, okay. I've seen
And
that one before. And so
that has
did
stuck
you
with
go
me.
down a trajectory like were you questioning like 9/11 and then following people in a very cliche way, or did you just suddenly come across something? I mean, like what caused you to actually question everything like literally in the news beyond the sticker? Was it a specific story?
It was probably started at 9/11. Once, okay, so 9/11 happened, I was in kindergarten. So I did see it at the time. I didn't know what was going on, but it wasn't until I was probably 15, 14 years old that stuff started to make sense. And that's been 12 years ago. So I'm 26 now.
Okay, cool, cool.
So
I
I've
mean,
been questioning things for about 12 years.
I didn't even. I mean, I questioned a lot of. I assumed that most stuff was real, and if anything, I thought that things were darker than the media would ever reveal. So when Sandy Hook happened, for example, I assumed it was some kind of operation by Democrats to murder a bunch of kids to score political points, and I didn't think that was far-fetched. I thought that space was real and all these things, but it's just because I wasn't looking too closely and I accepted the premise. And I think that's what they get you to do with movies and entertainment and games. They just get you to accept things as you just take these things for granted. This stuff is real. And then you don't really want to watch it in the news because it's just bad news. But yeah, once I started realizing that, yeah, you can actually critically examine this like you're examining a bad movie and it all falls apart.
Oh, dude, up until I was 18, I was, well, no. So up until about 18 or 19, I was still very much in love with space. And then I kind of dip off the space topic till about 22, 23. That I got back into this to the loving of space. Then the following year, it just fell apart. Prior to that, though, I did delve into the flat Earth theory and went down many, many, many rabbit holes on YouTube, and then they took all that down, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, you know
Those
what?
are really amazing
They
to
should
watch.
have, look, if there's nothing to this topic, and if flat earthers are a bunch of intellectually defective troublemakers, then they should have just let them continue to air it out and then come to their conclusions and then disband it. But what they did is they kind of created martyrs and rebels, and now it's like, and I was even saying to some friends today, even if you showed me unequivocal proof that the Earth is a ball, I'll probably still wear flat Earth shirts just to piss people off because at this point, it's just a political statement. It's like I don't trust your experts.
I will say one thing that I don't know if it really stuck out, but something that stuck with me. And Durst was doing an interview with this older lady, and she was explaining that they were taught the Earth is more flat than it is round. So, as he was saying in the interview, that he was starting to go towards or go outside of that interview, and I don't know what documentary. I probably saw this shit on TikTok. Like, I hate to say that, but
I have some friends that
he
TikTok,
went to say
so no shame.
he went to say that as they started to like go to different nursing homes to try and question many of the older folks about the shape of the earth, then all of a sudden COVID happened.
You know what? Okay, that's kind of funny you bring this up because I remember when it was the neckbeard guy, Nathan Thompson, was running on playgrounds shouting, "The earth is flat," to the children and ignore your teachers. And then Dirt goes around deep inside the rabbit holes. Now he's Flat Earth Dave. I just call him Fed for short. So Fed's now going around to nursing
Okay.
homes. And he starts saying, ask people over 100 if they were taught the earth is flat. And immediately after that, COVID happened. And they kind of took credit for it. However, there's a whole lot of predictive programming for COVID. So you can't really make that.
There is. There is. And there was just something that was like, well, if you're looking for a great distraction in terms of revealing the ultimate truth,
Okay, I agree on this. I
flat
agree
Earth
on this point
would.
that the pandemic was really a cover to go after information, mind viruses. And you could argue that the most dangerous mind virus out there is that the news media is fake and the globe is a lie. And so, you could make that argument that the pandemic was a necessity to shut down what's happening now, which is an explosion in skepticism, radical skepticism. And of course, the flat
Yes.
earthers who are activists would represent like the worst of the worst when it comes to these are the ones who are destabilizing this perfect system that they're trying to create.
Well, I've got one other scenario that's very similar. Do you know Greer, the UFO specialist,
Yeah, Richard
or have
Greer.
you heard of Greer?
Yes, yes, I have.
Yes. So back before 9/11 happened, he was in the Senate trying to get as much of the UFO evidence or whatever declassified from the CIA. And as they were in a sense within the processing or the proceedings, 9/11 happened, and then they got put on the back burner completely. And that was a documentary by or from Greer himself. It's been like 3 years since I've seen it, so I do not know the exact name of it. I can call you back in 2 days and let you know what it is.
Okay. Now, when it comes to this UFO thing, it's noteworthy that the first UFO crash, well, the first sighting was actually Jack Parson and L. Ron Hubbard's girl, Marjorie Cameron. She saw one in 1945. She was the one who played the priestess role in their kinky black magic rites. But the first UFO crash was Roswell 47 in Corona Field. And there's a lot of Corona
The first
symbolism connected with
official.
UFOs. Yeah, the first official.
Okay.
So I find this to be
I'm
noteworthy
following.
because what we're talking about here is there's a correlation between this incoming viral invasion of the world that shuts the world down, the new crown, the new order, and UFOs, aliens, which is always associated with, in my view, the Elohim or angels, fallen angels. So there's some kind of like a divine intervention that's preordained to happen, some type of invasion, and maybe it's not UFOs, maybe it's all internal. Maybe it's all possibly even injected. was one of my thoughts, especially after Putin released that movie called Sputnik. Oh, no, sorry. He released a vaccine called Sputnik the day the movie Sputnik came out of Russia. And the movie was about an alien that arrives as a virus.
I believe the reason why they silenced the Greer documentary in terms of trying to release that was because they were not in the right timeline or was not ready to release, UFO being real with the current state of the people being more relaxed, free, and like, yeah, whatever type shit.
Interesting.
Or being more willing to accept the idea that there is extraterrestrials and we are not special.
Well, I think this is also true that this is very political. Just like the virus and the vaccine and guns, it's like, left wing is pro mandatory vax, anti gun. Right wing's like, don't poke me, don't take my guns. But when it comes to aliens, when aliens arrive, the Christian right, especially the QAnoner side, I think they might be more inclined to see the aliens as the armies of Satan or something. Whereas the other side will see them as saviors because they represent a future, mankind evolved in the future, technology as savior. So the aliens might bring us a new, the iPhone 33. It's like way advanced tech. So the left will embrace them, and the right's going to say, let's go to war with them. That's kind of how I think it'll play out.
It might come into that. I can't speculate. I'm not a fortune teller,
I'm not a fortune
but
teller, but
that
Netflix is. The entertainment media actually literally
yes,
is a predictive model for the future.
I actually have picked up a little bit on that.
Well,
I'm
look,
just waiting for the division to play out.
The Division, and that movie comes out next month or next year, so it's coming out. Jake Gyllenhaal, Division, and there's another movie someone brought up last night where a space station falls. So I literally am suggesting that the sky is about to fall, and I think China's going to be at fault here, and it's going to be. I'm hoping I'm hoping that they wrote it so that the Dragon capsule flips the space station and they drag down a third of the satellites. So it's just like Revelations where the dragon brings down a third of the stars. I think it would be poetic.
I mean, overall, that'd be kind of cool just to see it on the news. Be like, haha, told you so.
But sadly, they're going to kill our internet connection. That's the one thing. Like with COVID, they hypermediated us. They had you sit down in your house and you're saturated with stuff. When they do this next operation, when everything falls down, I think it involves blackouts and censorship and taking all the fun out of the internet. I mean, hopefully that's not what happens, but I think that's the agenda here.
I would say I wouldn't be too disappointed if that happens. It'd be nice to have peace and quiet.
Right, well, at least you have an informed understanding of what's going on. So you're not going into the dark scared.
Yeah.
You're going into the dark knowing it's all just a show. And so like, I kind of see where you're at.
Right.
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate the call. Call back anytime.
Yeah, bud, no problem. Hey, if you want, call me Mini Hand.
Mini and
That's
gotcha.
my. All right, bud. See ya.
See ya. All right. Excellent. Great caller. I've been sending out live stream notifications via text, and it tends to bring in callers immediately. A commenter asks, wasn't Devil's Advocate's climactic Pacino monologue filmed in Trump's New York City penthouse loft? Yes, that is correct. Donald Trump is a heavily meta-scripted character. He existed in the media long before he existed as a person. He was foreshadowed. He was even written into Back to the Future, a time travel movie, and he's Biff Tannen. The director even says this is Donald Trump. And the thing is, a lot of the predictive programming and or whether the instances of Trump existing in fiction before he exists in real life involves time travel. It's one of the reoccurring themes. In fact, I could point to a couple of things. I believe it's called Trackdown. There's this western about a carny or a charlatan named Trump. And the release date of that particular episode is very significant. It ties into a Quantum Leap episode where it's a young Donald Trump in the back seat, and of course it's a time travel show. We may go back into this soon. Because the reason I bring this up is that if you're looking at world stage characters who are 100% fake, and these do exist, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's an observation, crisis actors exist. So you have a crisis actor in chief. He's not an autonomous individual if the predictive programming foreshadowed his emergence. It's not prophecy. I mean, otherwise, you have to imagine these to be extraordinary coincidences. You'd have to be a coincidence theorist to say, well, all these different events, or movies rather, that were foreshadowing Trump in 2020, all just coincidences. From Donnie Darko, Back to the Future, and dozens of other things we could mention. All right, let's see here. Alex Fernandez says you will need an internet ID in the future to go online. Right, that's kind of where I think it's headed. We'll see. I mean, at the same time, I feel like it'd be kind of counterproductive to shut everything down because then the brainwashing gets shut off. But however, maybe it's just a matter of keeping us from communicating to one another. Listen to this. This is from Reuters.com. IMF 10 countries simulate cyber attack on global financial system. So whenever I see the word simulate in this type of context, I immediately think, well, obviously it's a rehearsal. Think Event 201. And, the caller brought up The Division, which is a Tom Clancy book about shutdown of the world, martial law because of a bioterror attack, which hits the money. Well, that ties into
Okay.
another one of these drills. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Hey, what's up, man? I was just listening to your show. Let me turn it down. You guys are talking about Tartaria?
Yeah, actually, the first caller brought that up. We were talking about this because, I don't want to just dismiss it. And it's all based on the idea that this great reset isn't the first reset that we've been through, and that there was another one in the 1600s, 1700s, or something, a few hundred years ago. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've looked into it. My dad brought it up to me, and I started going down that road. I never really followed the mainstream guys. Conspiracy R Us. Um, I think it's one guy's. His name's Alan, Flat Earth Nation, and what he was saying was around 1711 there was a reset, and it was the end of the millennial reign. It was when they, and it's confusing because it's like the whole Addo Domini was only for that 1,000 year period. That anything prior to that or after that was just a crapshoot. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Okay. And so, do you agree that they've basically added 1,000 years onto our calendar in order to,
That's yeah,
bury?
absolutely,
Okay. To explain away the
absolutely.
transition from the high-tech civilization to what we arrived at.
Yeah, and see, I don't really buy into the whole free energy high tech. I just think it was everybody was doing their thing. Every nation was blessed. Whatever that thing is that was locked up for 1,000 years, that whatever you want to call that creature, wasn't deceiving the nations according to the Bible. So it wasn't running around driving everybody mad like it is right now in 2021. I
Okay,
mean,
so okay,
it's literally
interesting.
obviously loose.
So you're suggesting that we'll just say the devil, we'll say Satan, we'll say the beast.
Right.
The beast
That's
was
right.
chained up or constrained for a period of time, and now it's running amok.
Yeah, it was basically his that was because he rebelled. There was a war in heaven, and that was a part of the punishment, and it was we're just following through. If if 1,000, what is it, a day in heaven is 1,000 years on earth. If it's a 6,000 year creation or 7,000, it's like 6 or 7 days. So it's like that was a part of his punishment was to go down into the pit in blackness. He didn't have a TV watching everything that was going on topside. So when he came up, he had to start surveying and corrupting things. And of course, he went after the Catholic Church. And, of course, he went to the secret societies. Of course, that's how it all began. It's all about the secret societies, and the church was corrupted just to drive everybody crazy, dilute everything that was like holy and sanctified.
Okay,
So,
so I mean this is fascinating. The idea here being,
yeah.
I mean this honestly, I mean I'm not like a literalist or a believer in this stuff necessarily. However, It's
Right.
it would be reality denial to say that there isn't the nomenclature of some cryptopsy that worships Saturn, Satan, the sun, and
Right.
all kinds of things, but mostly the symbols are very pointed to a very specific narrative having to do with this deity or character, persona, devil
Hmm.
that is in
Sure.
rebellion and leading man into some kind of simulation or
Madness.
yeah, madness,
Yeah.
metaverse. The metaverse could also be a new level of imprisonment for the souls of the demiurge, is the term I used earlier.
Right. Yeah, that's I've heard that before. And that's the thing. The people who are running the show, and I don't know if you would call it running the show. They're just doing their thing. They're just real materialists. They don't have the correct answers. Let's be honest. If they had the correct answers, if they knew everything, they wouldn't be screwing over humanity. They'd be like, "Look, man, this life is short. I'm going to get judged. I don't want a railroad society for castles and speedboats. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not worth it." So I mean, they're even led astray. Um, only the fringe who look into it and are called crazy, the one thing that everything mocks, those are the people probably closest to the mark, obviously. Um, you know what I'm saying? I mean, and the whole thing about the Bibles, I know there's a lot of translations, and I get that. That was part of the plan. Look, if the Bible was not a legitimate thing, they would have burned it a long time ago. I mean, the whole book burning. I know you're familiar with that. I listen to your show all the time. They would have burned them things up, man.
Oh, sure, the
It stood
first,
the
yeah,
test of
yeah,
time.
right, but
Yeah, yeah. I think the reason why it stood the test of time was it was because it was the Word of God. It was basically saying, "Here's your history. Here's how you should live. Here's how it's going to go down."
so
The only thing the devil could do was just modify it.
do you agree with my assessment that the mainstream media is the de facto state church for the new world order?
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it, dude. I've been listening to you since 2017. I've never called in, but absolutely, 100%, man.
All right, I appreciate it. Yeah, 'cause
100%. Everything you say is like on point, man. It's awesome.
I think the black TV set is the black cube of Saturn, and that's where all the illusion comes from, and that is the
Yes.
Bible. That is the device that's synchronizing everybody, and now it's in our faces. It's the black cube. It's
Hmm.
the black screen, the black mirror of the
Right.
iPhone, and of course the phrase iPhone, self phone, iPod. It's all been this thing about atomizing the individual, and I think that what we're seeing here is we are merging with the monolith, which is of course um, the screen. We're all going into the same vision, the same
Yeah.
false worldview, and there's going to be no alternative when they're
Right.
done.
Yeah, whenever you die, the only thing you take is your mind, your consciousness. So if you don't get your head right, if you don't come out of the matrix, you're not going to take your yachts and your castles with you. So the whole thing is to railroad your mind. It's to just take you away from your creator. And that's the thing. And that was the whole thing with the ball earth, flat earth. It's just basically, it's just, you got to go opposite of everything they tell you just about. You got to be prudent. You got to like really do your homework. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole trick is to get your head screwed up. I mean, your body's, dude, they got your body. You're here. Everybody's freaking out. But hey, man, your body's in the system. But where your soul, your spirit, your consciousness, whatever is inside of you, that's the one thing that they can't get. The people who listen to your show are already liberated. You guys we already won. You just got to like, just take it to the end. You know what I mean? Just, live out your life and be happy. But
Right, right. I
yeah,
couldn't,
absolutely. I
I
mean,
couldn't fall back under the spell 100% if I tried. I mean, I could
no,
pretend, but no. I mean, I already. You see through a magic
mm-mm.
trick, you can't really be fooled by it again.
No, no, and it's just like you said, man. It's like you're no longer afraid. You're no longer living in fear. You have like rational thoughts and stuff. And yeah, it is extremely tough. I don't want to go back into the major. I don't want to go back believing in all that in fairy tales. And this is the way it was supposed to be. I mean,
I've been
it's just like
watching. Well, I know I've
uh,
been watching all these movies on TV and Netflix, and they're selling people on this idea of digital transcendence, of your consciousness going into a cloud and having immortality, which would be interesting if they could pull
yeah,
it off, because then you would be in a sort of a limbo. You wouldn't move on. If this was true, you'd basically be stuck in some hard drive somewhere. I mean, it's an interesting notion.
yeah, yeah. It goes back to the Garden of Eden. It's you shall be as a god, and you shall live forever. It's the greatest lie. It's the greatest trick from the beginning. And that's the thing. So the people that are obviously calling shots, if you will, dude, they've got to be confused. See, they've got to think that we're absolutely in left field, and we think that they're in left field, worshiping lights in the sky in the firmament, whatever. I mean, That's the thing. I mean, it's crazy. But if they had all the answers, if they were 100% legit, then they wouldn't be doing what they were doing. Not just the way, I mean, from my reality, that's the way I think. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? I think they're
Could
just,
be.
we're all materialists.
I mean, there's this
Yeah.
element of trickery with the devil in all of his various representations. Someone had brought up Al Pacino in Devil's Advocate, where
Yep.
the people who sell their souls are ultimately dupes, stooges, and that's true with like I think with a lot of revolutionary
Yep.
movements. You have the expendable cannon
Yeah.
fodder, and they're the first ones to be disposed of when the revolution is successful because they're shown to be worthless.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Faustian. The devil's like the greatest comedian, man. He is, dude. It's the genie in the lamp with your three wishes, man. It gets the people who are into material things, shiny objects, stuff like that, man. Lovers of themselves, the pride. That's the thing. No, never looking into the spirit realm. If they do, they're conversing with corrupt, entities, some type of unclean spirit that was probably released possibly during the flood, the first reset. See, I think that was the first reset was the flood, and I think the earth will show you that. I believe the second reset was the Roman Empire fell, Armageddon, and that was what everybody's talking about. That started the 1,000 year, you know, reign of somewhat of peaceful. The wheats and the tares lived together, so it wasn't perfect. Every Christian likes to think it's perfect. The Bible never says that. It just doesn't. And then after that, when the 1,000 years was up, that's the magic question. That's the one thing that eludes everybody. Nobody knows that date. It could be 1711. It could be 1812. It could be 1850. Everybody's looking for that, but it's obviously taking place. We're obviously in the
This
short season.
flood story is fascinating. I'm watching this show on Netflix called The 100 about this space station
Mhm.
called the Ark because the world's been,
Right.
destroyed. And so there's imagery is constantly used. There's constant references to Old Testament mythology in science.
Mhm.
Noah telling us that there's going to be a flood,
Right.
and it's all just a modern take on the flood myth. And I don't think any of these things are accidental. And this idea of a
Right.
reoccurring reset to me seems to be very plausible. I just don't know if it's physical destruction or if it's just a reset of our minds through total media control and censorship. I mean, they could accomplish it probably either way. But uh,
Well, yeah. When I listen to you, there's three things that I've keyed in on, and that is a breakaway civilization because people are tired of dealing with the zombies, the masked up, vaxxed zombies. Okay, this number two, space debris, falling objects. Dude, that's like big in the zeitgeist. What was the number? The third one. Oh, the number third one was like Russia and China. So always having that beef, that fake beef, because everybody that rules this place is in a secret society that's at the top. So there's corruption and there's collusion at the very top. That's just basic, 101. So that's your Gog and Magog. That's your city of the saints. And in the Bible, it says there will be some type of rapture, so to speak, because in that verse where I think we're headed to, says that there will be an army that marches across the broad plain. It would be the armies of Gog and Magog. That would be just a massive number of people, and they'll never make it. They'll never get there. They'll get burned up from fire from the sky, whether it be brimstone or just some kind of like godly event. And then it's like they're mentally preparing us for that. It's like you said, it's like they're getting everybody, so they'll have a way to explain it away, all the way to the very end. It'd be like, oh, it's climate change. Oh, it was
exactly,
the
exactly.
Republicans.
For 33 years now,
Yeah,
they have pummeled our minds
yeah,
and our ears with this climate change idea. In fact, a lot of fiction went from science fiction with alien invaders to climate fiction, where now climate is the major component here. And so when it happens, people don't have any other explanation but climate change. And
yeah,
now, if you don't believe in climate change because you know it's based on fake consensus science and computer models, they'll say, well, look, there's evidence, and then you don't have any sort of
right.
recourse. So, yeah,
Yeah, because
absolutely.
you can't challenge them, right? You can't challenge, and anything that comes from the sky is associated with climate. It's never God. It's always random events, Big Bang. It's always climate. If the earth quakes, I mean, it's because we were fracking. They've always got something to explain it off. I'm telling you, that's why I like listening to you because you point out the things that I think are on the horizon based off of God's word. and I see it. I see them, prepping that falling object, space helmets, dude. I love it, man. But you're so on point with that, and you point it out, and it's like, dude, it's like falling in place. Now, granted,
It is falling in place.
not,
This
yeah,
is a long-term agenda, and just like they planned 9/11 when they built those buildings 33 years before,
yep,
the Skyfall event has been planned decades ago. So there's not going to be a change in
yep.
the agenda here, no matter what we say.
Yeah, even the James Bond movie, which Skyfall, which is a great movie by the way. Yeah, yeah, just preparing. That super villain Skyfall, and yeah, there's so much in the movies. The movies they're basically just back up the news and the world leaders. What do you call him? Klaus Vader? Dude, I love that. That's
Yeah,
so
Klaus Vader.
classic.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I refuse to call them by their real
yeah,
names, and yeah, you're right. This is
yeah,
it's like news reinforcement.
yeah.
That's what the entertainment and the video games and the comic books
Yes,
all
dude.
really are.
God, absolutely. Yeah, it's entertainment is a side effect of your propaganda. Like when you when you explain it about it's that tasty sweetness. Dude, I crack up in the space popes. I use it every day. I was like, I got to give my man IPS credit. The space pope. Don't you ever refer to anybody as what is it, Jeff Bezos? No, it's Pope Bezos.
Oh yeah,
100%,
yeah,
man. It's
Pope
so
Elon,
classic.
and then when I jacked did that
Pope.
song Pope Elon, it's epic. Yeah, because that's
Oh
what
my
they
God, I
actually
love
are.
the music. Yes.
They
Yeah.
really are.
Absolutely.
They have the keys to heaven.
Yep. And I've tried to show some of my friends the occult of the obelisk. I said, look, sit down, and this will explain. It's not about outer space; it's inner space. They're trying to get under your freaking skin. That's why the boosters are on the rocket, and there's that little needle on the rocket, dude. It's all about getting inside of you. There is no outer space; they can't go, bro. It's all smoke and mirrors. I tell people that, and some of my closest friends are down. They're like, oh my god, that's pretty cool. I was like, yeah, listen to IPS, man. Go
Yeah,
listen to that.
it's
I
coded.
mean,
I
they,
mean, orbit equals
yeah.
circulation. I think there's a correlation, and it's not a coincidence if you ask
Yep.
me, that they opened the replacement tower for the Twin Towers on 11/3, and that it looks
Hmm.
like a big needle. And of course, it's 1776 feet high, big Illuminati number, but the thing looks like a
Right.
needle. It looks like a
It
big
does.
syringe, and I'm like, okay, that's clearly the one world order is when we all take this one vision, this one symbolized by the
Yeah.
injection.
Yeah, man. It's like a gateway. It's like, and that's the thing. The one lip, the one tongue, which is English. You got your Babel. This goes back to your Genesis 6 or 3. I can't remember which one, man. But yeah, it's going back to that. It's going back to like pre-flood reset because it's if you read it, it says that the flesh was corrupted and that Noah was pure in his generations. So I don't know if you can conflate it to the goo bloods or the unvaxxed. I don't know. But all they do is just one-to-one allegories and mockeries. See, the mark is already over. I don't believe in the mark. Now, could they do a bootleg mark? Absolutely. It's their money. They created that whole fake paradigm. So if they want to, do the biblical mark to freak out everybody, they could. But in my reality, in my belief, that went down with the Roman Empire. That was your, just like in the movie Gladiator, where the guy had the mark on, with Maximus had the mark on his deltoid, man. Dude, all that was back then. The
Well, look,
Bible was not wrote for this future thing.
I do think
I
though
don't
that
think
the
so.
mask though the dilemma of the mask, the question of whether or not you're going to accept the mark of the priesthood of the day, the Church of MSM and their
Hmm.
scientists. Really, it came down to, are you going to trust them, and are you going to put on this religious garment that shows solidarity in the
Yeah.
faith? And I think that the mask is the mark of the beast. It's the mask of the beast. And I say that facetiously somewhat. Maybe the
Hmm.
devil just flipped one letter, and it was so clever, it tricked
Dude, that's
everybody
so
to not
funny.
noticing. But really,
It's
it
true.
accomplished what the mask, I mean, the mask does accomplish what the mark would do. You can't go into most stores without a mask. And
Right.
I think that it signals compliance and solidarity with the beast system.
Yeah, and but before I could forget this, let's talk about you said the 1776. That was Weishaupt or Weishaupt was in May, and then when July 4th. But don't forget that the Olympics were 776. You can chop that one. There's a lot of with that 77 and the six. I mean, and like 1492 or 1942. And then of course, Columbus is like more of that Columbia goddess. What is it between Maryland and Virginia, the Virgin Mary? You got DC, and yeah, the whole obelisk thing is, dude, it's
Okay,
a
and
big cult. It's a
the
big dick cult for real.
it really is actually. It's actually it's a
It
cult
is.
of both the yeah. It's a you could say it's
Hmm.
sun worship, but it's also I mean it's They worship the earth god and the sky goddess and everything in between. But the
Yep.
year 1846, the Liberty Bell cracking. And if you look at it as just
Yes.
846, well, 846
Hmm.
is the time in the morning 9/11 started. That was how long George Floyd was kneeled on.
Yep.
846
Yep.
is about the split, the crack in our society or schism in our worldviews here.
Right.
And so 846 cracking the Liberty Bell, very significant. And George Floyd's artwork that Waynell Sexton was showing the news had a Liberty Bell on it, with the crack.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, are these clues, are they spiritual clues to cue the people in who are really paying attention to this, who can see it? Is this like our truth drop? I mean, and the masses are just, chewing on popcorn, watching the screen. But my thing, you're right. I think they added that one because, I mean, if you really look at it, and that Flat Earth Nation guy, he did a really good video on that, but he jumps all over the place. He's kind of hard to follow sometimes. But yeah, he did it where the one was added. Dude, it was like 846. That could have been during the 1,000 years of, everybody not running around nutty. You know what I mean? I don't buy into the whole energy. I think they were just tied to nature. I think they used sound and vibration. They basically just got to just, live in peace and harmony. Everybody stayed in their respective areas and did their thing. And then you can see, like, I guess when the reset happened, or the mini reset, you got the West Indies Trading Company. People were doing drugs, running guns. I mean, it just started like the whole modern, and like, hey, we got to break this faction up. So we're going to create a narrative and invade them and say, hey, you guys get on the DC tit. And, the South was like, no. And they're like, no, you got to do it. So it's like you see the whole long game being played out. And it goes back to Pike and all of their stuff because, dude, they're trying to get us to be right before like the flood, like a one world system, a tower, all that collectiveness, one lip. Dude, it's so obvious. And then the corruption of genetics. I don't want to get into that because I don't know much about it, but it
Well,
seems
for a
like
minute,
we're
let's get
going
into
down
it.
that road.
What are the goo bloods actually getting into? What are they signing a blood contract with when they go that route?
I've just heard that word thrown out. I don't know much about it. I've just heard people joke about it, and I've never even Googled it. But apparently, not taking the vax, I guess the Bible talks about the blood is the life, so it doesn't corrupt or do something to your blood. How do you prove that, though, dude? I mean,
Well,
how do you
look, you
prove it?
can
How do we know?
you could make the argument though that the vax has brought out a dynamic of saved versus the unsaved. So you do have
Yeah,
that. You have the heathens, and they carry the devil's blood, and it's deadly. And then we're, of course, we're cured, or more cured than they are. So you have this holier than thou
right,
dynamic: saved versus unsaved, heathens versus the members of the world church.
right. To me, it looks like maybe God's saying, "Look, stop being so lukewarm. If you want to set your sights on an heaven, basically heaven on earth, and you basically want to get through this and win and pass the test, then start looking at your body as the temple of your spirit. Stop putting all that crap in it. And it's like a dividing line. I can see it, man. There's like something there. Everybody had a Damascus Road experience in 2020. Everybody came and just started. I mean, I had it prior, a little bit prior. I started to see things were not right. But 2020 was the perfect vision, man. 21, blackjack. 22, master builder number. We're fixing to see it start to build in 22. That's your Masonic master builder number. And it's not going to stop. This is not going away. We're headed to I believe, the final reset. That's the third, the
Well,
last
okay,
reset.
all this
And
talk about the reset with the World Economic Forum with their 666 logo and Darth Klaus on the
hmm
top of that thing, that all connects to Gaia, which is this global AI initiative. And all of this
hmm
stuff, the Great Reset talk, it all tied in to the Saturn Jupiter Great Conjunction. So even there, you have a
conjunction,
clear
right?
hint that their major transformations for our society correlate with the cycles of time.
100%. And I'm the one I called and left the voicemail wanting you to expound on that because I saw a lot of like air skits, from Kobe crashing from the air, the 846. And by the way, your work on the sun setting and the twin, dude, that was like, bam, that was awesome. Yeah. So in May, Gemini, I saw a lot of the air. So it was like, isn't the sign of Aquarius an air sign? People think it's a water. I don't know. There was something there. I thought it might have had to do with why they were doing so many air skits. Like King George, like we let the air out of King George in May. So it was like basically to me, it was like this is the end of the country. This is the end of our nation. It's like, George Washington, King George, or like George Floyd. It's like we're taking the air out of it. You know what I'm saying? It's to me, it was something I kind of
Oh,
like looked for.
interesting.
Hey,
I
man, this is
can't
the
breathe.
countdown clock.
I can't breathe has
Yeah.
been one of the major things. And then, yeah, okay, there's a couple things about this Aquarius. And yeah, it's a fixed air sign. And he's a water bearer
Hmm.
because he's giving knowledge to the world. So this is interesting because, yeah, George Floyd, I can't breathe. Anagram for a better China, kind of a side note.
China.
But
Yeah.
beyond that, we can't breathe. They're saying, oh, we can't breathe because climate change. Astro World, they were being crushed. They couldn't breathe. You
Yep.
had Dwayne, I think his name was Dwayne Wright, another guy who was killed near where Floyd was killed because of an air freshener he was pulled over. It's this idea he needed to
Right.
breathe.
There. You're right.
So the I can't breathe has been a reoccurring theme from, and then
Air.
COVID, of course, and the ventilators. So this has been going on for
Yep.
some time. And interestingly enough, when Kobe crashed, there's this very famous social media influencer, I think his name is Gary Vaynerchuk, who tweeted, quote, I can't breathe, which I thought was interesting. But that's out
Hmm.
there in the zeitgeist. It's being chanted. And then there's another
Yeah.
correlation here. George Floyd was being kneeled on by Derek Chauvin, the kneeling. Well, then you have, of course, the BLM movement all kneeling in solidarity. They weren't kneeling with George Floyd, I mean, Derek Chauvin. They were kneeling with Kaepernick, the leader of this
Right.
revolution. So the kneeling is actually one of the ways you, I mean, one of the ways
Diebombs.
you see Aquarius. Aquarius, he's the water bearer. He's
Yeah.
kneeling, and I think that the
Oh,
new
yeah. That's right.
age.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of correlation here, I think, between the I can't breathe, the kneeling, and the transition into Aquarius.
Yeah. And what if like you're cracking? I love your cracking work. What if that's like the a water portion of the Aquarian thing? Yeah, man. I think it's all like a Shakespearean skit, man. And it all has to do with those luminaries. They have a track. It's got cymatics. It's like got the geometry, dude. They're all into that. I don't. I mean, look, they're obviously in the wrong. They're obviously batting for the wrong team. They're materialists. They're lovers of themselves, prideful. It's not going to work out for them. I don't know. And the masses, the ones who truly wake up and find the truth. I mean, that's it. To me, that's what it's all about. I've looked everywhere. Nothing else makes sense, man.
Well,
It just
to me,
doesn't.
the main thing is we may not have a complete belief system handed to us, but we have a methodology for, bullshit
Yeah.
detection and filtering it out. And the world is a stage. The very first man to get vaxxed was a guy named William Shakespeare,
Shakespeare.
who grew up
Yeah.
in Shakespeare's hometown. His sister was Margaret. That was the first woman to get it. So the world's a stage. They
Hmm.
flaunt it in our faces. It's all about
Yep.
brainwashing or Brian laundering the masses.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's just a poke in the eye. It's a proverbial poke in the eye. It's like, here, we know you see it. Here it goes. And to us, it's just so absurd. But to everybody else, they just laugh it up because they're in the matrix. They're in a spell, man. They're asleep. And that's the thing. And see, going back to like, what do we have here while we've got 120 years in these bodies? I mean, if the Bible is like just telling you the history, it's even if you don't understand it to a certain extent, there's more of it that you will understand. The reason why there's only like one Quran or one other thing is because, dude, the Bible is. I'm telling you, man, that was the thing the devil did was just he's like God's probably said, hey, you can't do anything with it. You can just make a million copies of different translations. That was the only way he could, confuse the masses. You know what I'm saying? And so I do think it stands, and it does mat up where we're at. Stuff falling from the sky, breakaway civilization, Gog and Magog, rumor, wars, rumors of wars,
And there is
genetic warfare.
even if you don't put any stock in anything about literal translations or interpretations of the Bible, it does in fact have a structure that does correlate to the seasons. There is
Yeah,
that
right.
astrotheological component, so you can't dismiss
Yeah.
all of it. And I've been speaking, I'm going to probably try to get him on here soon, to someone who studies astrotheology in depth, Micah Dank, an author, and he was the one who told
Hmm.
me that if you look at the Coptic calendar, their New Year's Day is 9/11. But the
Yeah.
significance there is its correlation to the dog star. And on New Year's, here in about
Mm.
a couple of weeks, people are going to be counting
Ball
down,
dropping. Yep.
ball dropping, worshiping Sirius along with all the Masons.
Dude, that was awesome. Yeah, you turned me on to that. I didn't know that. That was pretty good. And that's the thing. When it comes to astrotheological, like how the Bible relates, of course it does. It makes perfect sense. It's just God. Everything here was made by God. Only thing we do is rearrange objects and modify. We can't create anything. We take what's here and we modify it to our pleasure. And that's the thing. Everything was here created. So the way everything matches up with the sky doesn't scare me off. It actually makes perfect sense, man, because it's God's creation. It's God's realm. It's the word of God. It's going to jive. It's never going to be abrasive, or it's never going to be a conflict between his luminaries and the word. Like it doesn't, it makes a lot of people mad and they get triggered. I'm like, bro, dude, it's God's realm. Everything, the math, everything is just going to like work together, and
Well,
it's going to sync,
I plan to go
you know?
deeper in our research into magic, the occult, Western occultism, John D.
Yeah.
007, and where it
Yeah.
connects to modern media. Because whether or not people choose to recognize it, we're witnessing a magic show. It's not just a movie, it's a magic show. And beyond being a magic show, there does seem to be some level, some spiritual component, for lack of a better term, but there's a technology here. And, people talk about suppressed technology, antiquitech. They used to have high technology in the past. Well, if there
Yeah.
is a suppressed technology we could point to, perhaps it's magic. Maybe there's something to
Yeah.
it, and this is why it's always met with ridicule, and you're meant to laugh it off. It's like childish or something. Well, maybe there's something to it. So I'm going to be digging into that more in the
Yeah.
future because when I look
Awesome.
at the astrological timings, the occult symbolism around everything, that's something that it's beyond fake news.
Right. Have you heard people talk about taking the download, like, we're like Wi-Fi receptacles, and what they put out like streams to us, and we either pick up on the Holy Spirit or like godly things or nature, or we're in like the system where it's like, Anderson Cooper 24/7, or Tucker Carlson. It's just whatever is synced up with us, and it's like, man, I think you're, dude. I can't wait for you to go into that, because there is some type of magical electrical vibratory component that drives us, man. And I think it's right in our face, and we just don't point it out. It's probably like hidden right under our noses. It's
I
probably not
think
even
so.
hard to find.
I think so.
Yeah,
I've done some
absolutely.
research in the matter, and in just the subject of group magical ritual, the theory behind it. So I'll go into the theory of magic, the theory and practice of it, just to see.
Yeah.
Because even if it's all fake, isn't it a little curious that they all behave as though it's not fake? Like, oh yeah, it's all fake. There's nothing to
Right.
it. But yeah, they're going to go ahead and burn effigies before a 40-foot stone owl every summer.
I mean, yeah, dude. I mean, man, what your work with oh my gosh. I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry, but yeah, how they, the guardrail thing, about how like you'll never hear him call it fake, dude. That moved, that right there is where I gained that extra notch, where people that I encounter are like, oh man, he's spitting truth. I'm like, dude, he will never go to far enough. He's a guardrail, and I have to sit down and start that whole conversation about, look, man, he's going to lead you. It's a limited hangout. You're just going to be hanging out there. You're going to get a little bit of truth, but he's never going to go full.
Yes,
He's never going to call it BS, dude. That's so spot. That's so effective right there, man. It's so
it
effective.
is the next
And
notch. You have to get to that notch to really be
yeah,
off the world stage, to have a post media critique. You really do have to go that extra step. And all the mainstream
you do.
conspiracy theorists, they stop short of that.
Always. That's the sign, man. That's like, and that's so basic. So, I mean, that probably goes with the magic. It's really right in your face. It's just common sense. It's basic, and that's the way they've hit it. They've lured you into these fantasies and stuff where it's probably elementary, man. It really is. It's very basic. But yeah, your work on the guardrails, and golly, man, that's freaking awesome, man. And that's the truth, because I've looked. Everybody's been in the Alex Jones, camp, and the whole thing about the Sandy Hook thing when he rolled on that and stuff. I was like, man, there it is, dude. It's
Yeah,
like
look, this is how they
everything
trapped
he
us.
said was backed up.
Alex Jones's task was to convince everybody that what you're seeing are false flags, which means somebody else did it. But they never questioned the
Yeah.
it. And I'm saying, did it even happen? And anybody who says that it happened, whether it was done by party A or party B, is lying. And Alex Jones is a
Yep.
false flagger. And false flag theory doesn't change the basic facts of reality. What it does is it protects the hoax. And they don't want you to know about the hoax
Exactly.
because once you realize that there's hoaxery going on, it exposes that both parties and all sides of this so-called political spectrum have a uniform director.
Absolutely. That's it. That. To me, all of the Saturn, all of the Moloch, Baal, all of your Sirius and stuff, it all funnels back to that one entity. To me, that's just me. I mean, I mean, could you make an argument about other religions going back to God? I don't think so. But I definitely believe that all the little tricksters, the mercurial aspects, and the star, dude, all of that is just a slippery slope back to the one that the deceiver, Satan. I mean, to me, the accuser, whatever you want to call him. I mean, many names. That's the thing. Most people don't even. I mean, most Christians they don't even think that they're deceived. It's what kills me. They're the most shut down that I've ever met.
Oh, you know what
They're
2020
like,
showed
I've
us?
got it all figured out.
In 2020, the atheists were given a devil because they already have a god. It's global warming. It's the globe, rather, with
Yep.
his angry god, his global warming complex. But they were given a devil in 2020, COVID-19, a devil they could believe in, and the sin they could believe in, the virus. And I think what we saw was the New World Order's church punked all the other religions and said, no, you stay home for Easter and you watch CNN. So everybody's now watching the Church of the NWO's pulpits, and meanwhile,
Yep.
nobody's at the traditional religious pilgrimages. Everything's shut down. So, yes, COVID dominated all the other religions, and that all happened. And I figured this was all just the new crown, novel corona, the new system being
Yeah.
implemented. And so that's why, I even saw the kneeling then with all the politicians as actually being kneeling to this new crown. I don't think it was ever about uh, Floyd or
Right.
whatever.
But you got to make it makes you wonder, like, well, who are they? You said it was the crossing of the thigh bones, it was the Jolly Rogers, it was the skull, the 322, and yeah, Google Genesis 322. I mean, man, it's who are they kneeling to? That was what look. I get they're all kneeling, but who is this dark entity? And I think, I think it was an ODD TV did a video a long time ago, years ago, when I was first getting into it. They were interviewing famous people about who is the devil, selling your soul, going to the crossroads. And dude, DMX was the most profound because, and I can't quote this one to one, but he was basically like, the devil is, he's everybody and nobody. He's like, he's there when it's convenient and you just know it. I mean, does that make sense? But yeah, the ODD interviewing all the people, like, who's the
Okay,
devil?
so
Did you meet him?
the DMX thing is
Yeah,
very interesting because, yeah, he had various descriptions of times where he met the devil, and he spoke about it as though it was a
right,
literal battle over his soul. And interestingly enough, over
right,
Easter weekend, he was fighting for his life. And during that weekend, so this is like, the harrowing of hell when Christ goes to hell for 3 days to save those souls. So it's
yep,
like, is he fighting for his soul during this 3 day period? And it coincides with Easter. And so you have these trending hashtags
yep,
about he is risen, and people were like, is it DMX? Is it, and again, they were conflating this,
right,
I think, on purpose. And moreover, you had Satan was trending that weekend because of Nas X with a video where he's lap dancing the devil. So you had this big battle
yeah,
between a guy who's selling himself to Satan and a guy who was fighting against Satan, and it's happening over Easter weekend. And so it was like the Easter psychodrama wasn't just in the Catholic churches and the harrowing of hell idea, where they covered Jesus with a cloth for 3 days. No, it was actually being promulgated through the entertainment media with these characters on the world stage. Very Shakespearean.
absolutely. I think when I heard DMX speak, it moved me. I was like, man, that right there to me sounds like it was closest to the mark. I mean, he looked genuine, and what he said, I can see it, and I kind of pictured that myself. I was kind of biased to what DMX was saying, and yeah, they do all these little psychodramas and mimics and stuff. It's just like mimics, and it's always about Jesus, always about God, it's always about the devil,
Oh yeah, how
and
many
that's
33-year-olds have died or have had, like, for
for
example,
real.
where they contextualize, like, for example, when Nipsey Hussle dies at 33 carrying a son named Cross to the point where he's killed between two
Right.
convicts. I'm like, they're constantly scripting things according to these older
Yeah.
myths.
And like, I know people have conflated the 33 to the Christ age, but what about a third of the fallen stars, which would be, the things that came down here? I call it like the Jerry Maguire scenario, where the devil's like, "Who's with me? Who's coming with me?" And he took like a third. And look, I can't explain it. Nobody really can explain it because we weren't there. We don't know. We're just taking the word of scripture. But it's like a Jerry Maguire. It's like it's like when Tom Cross was like, "Who's with me?" And then like a third. Maybe that 33 to them means a third of their gods, like the Titans.
Yeah, I've come
I don't
across
know.
that
I
would be
mean,
the number that
yeah,
that's an interesting
maybe,
correlation there. I mean, the 33
yeah,
is definitely strongly correlated with the order out of chaos, as in, the psychological
hmm
operations, and it's definitely correlated with the Masons, and of course, I think it strongly can be associated with the Kundalini fire snake, and that would be the association of the vertebrae in the 33 segments. And of course, Christ
yeah,
33, transcendence, crown, corona. So, yeah, these things all
yeah.
overlap. And that's one of the
They do.
reasons why I call this thing a metascript, because they're operating with the same
Yep.
language, same lexicon, same symbolic system. And it's so damn consistent that you would have to be a
hmm
coincidence theorist to say that this isn't intentional.
Right. Yeah, and everybody likes to point fingers at the Masons, Jesuits, the Rosicrucians, or whatever the Thelemites or whatever. But like I said, I think they're all. It's just like Protestants or Lutherans or Catholics. I mean, it's basically the absolute opposite of what the worldly stuff is. It's their versions of like, oh, I like the devil in this way, and he lets me do this, so I'm a this. It's the same thing. They're just. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, look how they're acting and look what they do. I'm not with that team. So whatever they put out and worship and revere, I'm going the opposite direction. And you can't not look at the Bible and go, this has got to be it because it's here. They didn't burn it off. Pope Bezos didn't burn it. They're still selling copies. It's like it was part of. It's like, look, man, you can't railroad people.
Wait, I mean,
What kind
I'm
of God would just
surprised that the Bible hasn't gone against terms of service. They're so
for real?
at that point though where they could say, "Hey, this is hate speech. It's not up to
Yeah.
date with our pronouns of the day, and there's all kinds of things wrong with it."
Sure, sure. I mean, that's why in every courtroom you got to lay your hand on it. There's got to be something there where the stipulation was like, look, you can railroad them, you can drive them mad, you can confuse them and play your little games, but the words got to stay. That's one thing. There has to be, you know, you got to be able to look at it. It's got to be here for you. You know what I'm saying? I think that was part of the terms and conditions. I mean, because God's always in control. We know how this is going to end. Good's going to prevail. This smash and grab that they're doing since 2020, it's going to go away. It's not going to last forever. You just got to hold out. You just got to hold out, man. That's what I've been doing. You just being
Hey,
cool,
final
trying to
question for
stay
you here.
sane.
Do you have any take
Yeah.
on the QAnoners who have somehow conflated the Kennedy dynasty with the blood of Christ? Do you think this is some kind of major league psyop, or do you think that they're right?
Absolute psyop. Man, what a joke. I've been telling people about that, man. Yes, dude. Yeah, the whole JFK, because he stood against the secret society. He made that one freaking speech. So that was their linchpin to him being some messiah. It is, dude, those people are going to fall hard psychologically. See, everybody's worried about me and you, man, and the people who listen to your show. No, the people who are going down that road are going to snap. That's your people who are going to snap. We're going to be at home watching it. Okay, and we're going to get blamed. But those are your people, and the people with masks on and shit. Like 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and they're still in masks. Those are the ones that are going to be losing their shit when they find out they've been duped.
Yep.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yep. I think that the whole Q actually I believe that, and I'll talk about this next because I found this poster that kind of confirms my take on this, but I think the movement is led by special operation intelligence agencies, some kind of special ops.
Yeah.
And what they're doing here, they got these agents who are trained in groupthink, mind control, and what they're doing is they're creating a doomsday cult templated off of
Mm-hmm.
a previous doomsday cult from the 80s called the Church Universal Triumphant, using the same template, the same
Yep.
prayers, the same narrative. And interestingly enough, that cult was radicalized into going into a bunker when they believed that China was about to attack. And right now,
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay,
Yep.
I think that the QAnoners are basically going to take a fall very soon.
Yeah, man. And it's got to be Tavistock or some shaman, some spook, somebody they pulled out of South America in the jungles. They're like, how do we really like railroad people's minds, And yeah, they're doing some spell magic and some word magic. It's definitely some hoodoo on that. Definitely, man. And if you look into the mud flood, I know I haven't listened, like I paused the show in there, but no, but I mean, if you're going down that road, what I was looking at was, why is the Roman Empire so many feet down, under like a layer of ash? Why are there melted mountains in Cappadocia, like Asia Minor, where Paul was visiting the churches? People did go into the catacombs and hide. Those mountains look like, melted cheese. Yeah, flooding, mud flood, earthquakes, all that stuff. That tear in the sky, that great, what is it, the rift? It could have been like when the stars rolled up like a scroll. I mean, there's the evidence, the physical evidence could be around us. It's all about your lens. It's all about what you want to believe, what you take as, the real thing, or if you think it's like Greta, it's because of, people driving V8s. And
Yeah,
that's
we've
why
been
we have all
given,
these
yeah,
problems.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that we have to go past the false explanations. There is an esoteric and an exoteric in our
yes.
society, and we are
Hmm.
looking past the exoteric. And it's like at every turn,
Yeah.
they've given us a false explanation. And I'm always finding things that I hadn't questioned yet. And like I tell people,
Hmm.
when Gravity came out, Sandra Bullock, I thought it was filmed in space because
Yeah,
some director had joked about it. Because I was like,
for
at that
real.
point, I hadn't even analyzed any of the footage to even question it that deep.
Yeah. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, hey, you've
Yeah,
been
the whole
listening
Sandra
since
Bullock era.
2017. I appreciate you calling in for the
Yeah,
first time. I'm sure there's others like you, and
yeah.
we're going. I have a
You are listening to Infinite Plane Radio. Stick around for live call-in shows. Stay for the music and recent replays. Join us at infiniteplane.live for 24/7 live chat with other listeners.